You build on failure. You use it as a stepping stone. Close the door on the past. You don't try to forget the mistakes, but you don't dwell on them. You don't let them have any of your energy or any of your time or any of your space, Johnny Cash. To many, failure is like a spreading blot of black ink on the pages of life. The more you look at it, the more regret you feel. The more you think about it, the smaller you seem. Some spend years living only in the memory of a single fall, as if their minds are trapped in a dusty old room of the past. But failure was never born to drown a human being. It was created to restructure them. Life operates much like the forging of a sword. Metal must be heated red hot, struck hard, and bent through fire to become strong and sharp. Failures do not destroy one's value. They destroy innocence, arrogant egos, and the weak illusions within. There are lessons that success can never teach. Only through loss do we understand the value of clarity. Only when rejected do we learn to stand firm without the validation of others. And only upon hitting rock bottom do we discover our legs are actually stronger than we thought. It is not failure, but the act of carrying the corpse of the past into the present. Many live as if dragging a suitcase full of painful memories. Every step is heavy because they refuse to let go. They constantly blame themselves, replaying old mistakes in their heads like an endless movie. Psychologically, prolonged remorse causes the mind to waste energy on what cannot be changed, while the present is left abandoned. The past is like a room that is burned down. You can learn from the ashes, but you cannot continue to live in them. Closing the door on the past does not mean denying what happened. It is the act of maturity from one who understands that memory should be a lesson, not a prison. The strong are not those who never make mistakes, but those who know how to stand up without turning their wounds into their identity. They view failure as a step, treading upon it to climb higher, instead of lying beneath it forever in lamentation. Life keeps moving. A river does not stop just because a branch has fallen, and a person should not let an old mistake occupy their entire energy, time, or the space within their soul. For the most beautiful thing in life is not having never fallen, but the ability to be reborn from the very place where we were broken. A closed door is not meant to end everything, but to give us the courage to walk toward other doors waiting to be opened. Life is either a daring adventure or nothing at all. Helen Keller. There are people who live as if they only exist to pass the days, waking up, working, being tired, sleeping, and repeating that cycle until the soul grows old, like a room devoid of light. They live so safely that they lose the sense of truly being alive. And then there are others. They see life as a vast journey where every challenge, every encounter, every loss, or fresh start is a part of the adventure called growth. A true adventure is not measured by the distance the feet travel, but by the depth of the soul one dares to explore. Some have never left their hometown, yet their hearts are always open to new ideas, new experiences, and new changes. Conversely, some travel to many places, yet their souls remain locked in the comfort zone of fear. What makes life feel meaningless is not a lack of time, but the loss of curiosity and the hunger for discovery. When every day passes identically, the mind begins to wither like a field long without rain. Life was not created for man to stand still. A ship is not built to stay forever in the harbor. The great sea always holds storms, but it is the wind and waves that help the ship understand its strength. It is the same for us. Those moments of daring to step out of the familiar, daring to love, daring to fail, daring to start over, daring to pursue what we believe in, are precisely when we most clearly feel the heartbeat of life within. Some experiences bring pain, but at least they wake us up. Prolonged safety, however, sometimes causes the soul to die slowly without us noticing. The greatest regret is not failing in life's journey, but having never truly walked it. Many grow old full of regret because they lived more by their fears than their aspirations. They let the eyes of others decide the path they took and let stability kill their once burning dreams. And in the end, they realize they have existed for a long time but have never truly lived. A great adventure does not mean a life that is always glorious. Sometimes it is simply maintaining courage through weary days. It is still believing in love after being hurt. It is still daring to start when everything seems too late. The most beautiful essence of life lies in its unpredictability. It is the unexpected turns, the stumbles, and the moments of profound emotion that make the journey of being human worthwhile. And perhaps, looking back, what makes us smile is not how many years we have lived, but how courageously and deeply we lived during those years. The secret of man's being is not only to live, but to have something to live for. Fyodor Dostoevsky. There are those who wake up, work, eat, and speak every day like a pre-programmed machine, yet inside they hold a silent void that nothing can fill. They drift through the years like a leaf swept away by the current, without direction or meaning, not knowing what makes their heart truly skip a beat. And then at some point, amidst the noise of life, they begin to ask, what am I living for? It is in that moment that a human being touches the deepest layer of existence. What exhausts us most is not labor or hardship, but the sense of futility. A person can endure poverty, failure, and even prolonged pain, if they still hold a reason to keep going in their heart. But when a purpose for living is lost, the soul slowly withers like a lamp out of oil. That is why many who have every material possession remain empty, while those who live very simply carry a light of peace in their eyes. Because what keeps a human being alive is not just a heartbeat, but the feeling that their life matters to someone or something greater than themselves. Knowing what to live for is when we find a spiritual anchor for the soul. Some live for family, wanting to be a sanctuary for those they love. Some live for the desire to contribute, to leave something good behind for the world. Some live for a very small dream, but one that is enough to wake them each morning with hope. A life's purpose doesn't necessarily have to be as grand as changing the world. Sometimes, it's simply being a kind person in a cold society. Just having one thing to believe in gives us the strength to overcome the darkest days. Life is like a boat in the middle of a vast ocean. Storms are inevitable. Without direction, the boat will be swept away by every gale. But when we know what we are sailing for, we possess an extraordinary resilience. Hardships are no longer just suffering. They become part of the journey. A candle can burn for a long time when it knows its light is warming someone. The saddest thing is not the death of the body, but when the soul dies while the person still exists. That is when they live without faith, without purpose, and without the feeling that they belong to this life. And the beauty of a human life is not found in how far they have gone, but in the fact that with every step, they know exactly what their heart is yearning for. Perhaps existence is not just to prolong the days, but to live a life sincere enough and meaningful enough so that looking back, one can peacefully say, I did not live in vain. The purpose of life is to live, and to live means to be aware, joyously, drunkenly, serenely, and divinely aware. Henry Miller. There are those whose souls died long ago, though their bodies still walk through crowded streets. They live as shadows of themselves, unfeeling, unmoved, and never truly present in each moment. Living is more than just extending one's time. It is the ability to feel deeply every pulse of life. Awareness here is not merely intellectual understanding, but the awakening of the soul. It is when one listens to the rain as if hearing the sounds of the world for the first time. It is feeling the beauty of the afternoon sun, a sincere hug, and the peaceful silence after a storm. A person truly alive is one who does not let their soul become paralyzed by the world. Much of human suffering comes from living too far from the present. They are either stuck in the past with old regrets, or so fearful of the future that they lose the ability to sense what is happening right before them. Their mind is like a room always full of noise, so they can no longer hear the gentle voice of life. To live in its deepest sense is to return to total presence. When eating, truly taste the flavor. When loving, truly open your heart. When in pain, dare to face it instead of running away. An awakened soul can find meaning even in the smallest things. Joyous, drunken, serene, and divine does not mean being happy at all times. It is the ability to embrace life with the full depth of one's emotions. Drinking in every experience like a traveler, exploring the world for the first time. Being serene before change, understanding that all things are impermanent. And feeling divine by realizing that life is a gift so precious that every moment of existence is worth cherishing. Life is like a flame. Some use it only to survive the long night, but others turn it into a light that warms both their own soul and those around them. A flower does not try to be great, it just blooms fully in its own nature. We are the same. When we truly live with deep awareness, we are no longer obsessed with proving our value to the world. We begin to find beauty in a breath, in a look, and in every ordinary moment of a human life. The most sacred thing about life is not what we have achieved, but how much we have felt during our brief presence on this earth. Each person must live their life as a model for others. Rosa Parks. The life of each person has never belonged only to them. Every action, every attitude, every way of facing suffering or happiness silently impacts those around us, like ripples spreading out from a small stone dropped into a still lake. A person living with kindness is like a garden with a natural fragrance. They don't need to lecture anyone, nor do they need to project a perfect image, but the way they live is enough to make others want to be better. Humans often learn more by observation than by words. A child does not grow from long lectures, but from seeing how parents treat each other on weary days. An employee doesn't truly believe in professional ethics because of company policy, but because they see a leader maintaining integrity even when no one is watching. An individual's life unintentionally becomes a mobile mirror, reflecting the values they choose to pursue. The most terrifying thing is not making mistakes, but living so meaninglessly that one leaves no light behind for others. There are those who pass through life like a cold wind, leaving behind exhaustion and negativity. But there are also those who are like the dawn after a long night. Just appearing is enough to make others feel that there is still hope in this life. A timely word of encouragement can save an exhausted spirit. A small act of honesty can ignite faith in a world full of skepticism. We often underestimate our own power, while sometimes the way we live is the greatest lesson for others to follow. Living as an example doesn't mean being perfect. It means daring to live sincerely, with responsibility and toward goodness even in the hardest of times. An ancient tree does not grow only to provide shade for itself. It stands firm against the storm so that the young sprouts below have a place of refuge. So it is with us. True value lies not in how much we possess, but in how much warmer the world becomes through our presence. And perhaps that is the most beautiful meaning of a lifetime. To live so that when others look at us, they gain more faith to keep living kindly amidst this turbulent world. I've been around a long time and life still has a whole lot of surprises for me. Loretta Lynn. There are people who, as they pass through more years, find their eyes growing deep and quiet like a lake that has witnessed countless storms. They no longer rush toward gain or loss, nor are they easily startled by fleeting glitz. Yet, the most wonderful thing about an experienced soul, after all the impacts of life, is that they still possess the capacity to be amazed by life. Age should bring absolute understanding, but in reality, the longer one lives, the more one realizes life is far broader than everything once known. A young person sometimes believes they can predict the future through intelligence. Meanwhile, the experienced understand that life is like the sky before rain. Clouds appear from places no one expected. Today may bring loss, but tomorrow may open a door of salvation. A chance encounter can change an entire destiny. A word seemingly small can be enough to heal a soul wounded for many years. Life always silently hides its miracles within the most ordinary moments. Only those who keep their curiosity toward life are truly living. When one thinks they have understood everything, their soul begins to age before their body. Surprise is the sign that the heart is still moving, still keeping the door open for hope to walk in. There are those who live like an old clock, repeating the same rhythm every day, until the soul is gradually covered in dust. But there are also those who, though their hair has turned white, see the world through the eyes of a child, moved by a late-blooming flower, smiling at the kindness of a stranger, believing that tomorrow could be more beautiful than today. Life never promised absolute peace. It is like a long river, sometimes calm, sometimes surging violently. But it is precisely that unpredictability that makes up the beauty of existence. If everything were known in advance, one would live as if rereading an old book. It is the surprises, whether painful or happy, that make each day worth moving toward. And perhaps the sign of a mature soul is not having seen through life, but that after all the years they are still gentle enough to say, I still want to see what tomorrow will bring. You will go through tough times, that's life. But I say, nothing happens against you, it happens for you. See the positive in negative events. Joel Osteen. Life does not move in a straight line of peace. It is like the vast ocean. There are days when the surface gently reflects the sun, but there are also days when storms rise, tossing the human boat, to the point where it seems impossible to go on. Everyone will go through hard times, silent losses, failures that shatter self-esteem, and long nights where loneliness rings louder than the clock. But what determines the depth of a person is not how much suffering they avoid, but how they interpret that pain in their mind. Humans tend to view adversity as a punishment. When betrayed, they think life is being cruel. When failing, they believe they are incompetent. But sometimes, those very events are the invisible hand pulling us out of our weak and limited versions of ourselves. A seed, if it wants to become a giant tree, must accept being buried in darkness before rising to greet the light. Coal must undergo immense pressure to turn into diamond, and we are the same. The cracks of suffering are often where the light of growth begins to enter. The positive in negative events does not always appear immediately. There are lessons that take years before we are calm enough to understand. A separation that once broke a heart might be the very thing that saved us from a misguided life. A crushing failure can be the beginning of the metal that ease could never create. Psychology calls this meaning reconstruction, the ability to turn trauma into awareness and adversity into motivation. The strong are not those who have never cried, but those who know how to use their tears to water their own growth. Life is sometimes like a strict teacher who does not give a test after the lesson, but gives the test first and then makes us find the lesson behind the pain. And it is in those moments that seem darkest that we discover the extraordinary endurance sleeping within us. A storm does not come to destroy the sky. It comes to make the roots cling deeper into the earth. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? Perhaps we should learn to ask, what is this trying to teach me? When the perspective shifts, pain is no longer entirely an enemy. It becomes a part of the journey, creating depth, wisdom, and compassion. And then one day, looking back on the hardest months, things that once hurt us were exactly what saved us from a more mediocre version of ourselves. The journey in search of sorrow is much like the journey in search of joy. Eudora Welty. Humans often spend their whole lives running from sadness as if it were a dark realm that, if touched, would shatter the soul. They throw themselves into fun, laughter, relationships, and successive ambitions just to fill the void within. The more they avoid sadness, the more it silently follows them. And at some point, they realize that the journey in search of sorrow is actually much like the journey in search of joy. For both are paths leading us back to ourselves. Joy and sorrow were never two completely opposite worlds. They are like day and night in the same sky, alternating existence to highlight the meaning of each other. One who has never lost will find it hard to understand the full value of happiness. A heart never broken will struggle to feel the total tenderness of love. Seeking sorrow is not seeking suffering, but seeking depth for the soul. It is the journey where we dare to face the weakest, loneliest, and most wounded parts of ourselves instead of hiding them behind forced smiles. Many fear sadness not because it hurts, but because it forces them to be honest with themselves. Joy often turns us outward, while sadness pulls us back inward. In the silence of precarious days, we hear clearly the true voice of our soul. Some only grow after losing what they loved most. Some only learn to love themselves after months of despair. Sadness is like a heavy rain. It does not come to destroy the soul's garden, but to wash away the dust accumulated for too long. Strangely, sometimes we seek joy only to meet ourselves in sadness, and at other times go through suffering to touch true peace. A sad song can make the heart lighter than 100 words of comfort. A lonely night sometimes helps us understand what we truly need in life. For at the end of emotion is not pain or joy, but awakening. When we no longer fear sadness, we begin to be free from our own insecurity. Life is like a long train passing through many different emotional realms. There are stations of happiness, stations of trauma, stretches of road bathed in sunlight, and curves submerged in darkness. But every experience contributes to the depth of a human life. And perhaps the truly mature are not those who only seek joy, but those calm enough to walk through both joy and sorrow, while keeping a heart that knows how to vibrate with life. I've learned that you shouldn't go through life with a catcher's mitt on both hands. You need to be able to throw something back. Maya Angelou. Life is not always a gentle stage where we only need to endure patiently, and then everything will naturally become better. Sometimes it is like an extended match against invisible pressures, trauma, injustice, words of disdain, consecutive failures, and silent fears that erode self-esteem every day. Many grow up accustomed to endurance. They think silence is maturity, tolerance is kindness, and sacrifice is the way to be loved. But if a person only knows how to bow before every wound, their soul will eventually resemble a house without a locked door, where anyone can walk in to disrupt everything inside. Being constantly on the defensive leads to a state of emotional exhaustion. They live like a boxer who only knows how to dodge, forgetting they also have the right to strike back in defense. And the most dangerous thing is when endurance lasts too long, it turns into a habit of devaluing oneself. Throwing something back here is not about revenge through cruelty or responding with hatred. It is the ability to stand tall before life. It is daring to say no to what hurts us. It is having the mettle to leave a place that no longer respects us. It is not letting the judgment of others decide our own worth. A tree that only knows how to be soft before every wind will soon be uprooted. It needs roots deep enough to hold itself in the storm. So it is with us. Kindness becomes much more beautiful when it goes with strength. There are those who spend their lives being the emotional cushion for others, always listening, always forgiving, always taking the loss. But deep inside, they gradually run out of energy because they never learned to protect their soul. A heart that is too gentle without boundaries will easily become a place where others dump their selfishness and indifference. It's not just about learning to love, but also about learning to set boundaries. Not everyone who enters your life deserves the right to hurt you. Life is like a long boxing match. There are times you are knocked down, times you are dazed and think you can't stand up. But true strength lies not in having never been hit, but in the ability to stand up with fire still in your eyes. A person who knows when to strike back doesn't do so because they love to fight, but because they understand that if they don't protect themselves, no one can do it for them. And perhaps that is when they maintain their kindness, but no longer let that kindness turn them into a victim of life. The aim of life is self-development, to realize one's nature perfectly. That is what each of us is here for. Oscar Wilde, fame, money, recognition, the admiring gazes of others. They diligently build a personal image, like architects trying to adorn the facade of a building, but forget that the deepest foundation lies in the soul within. And then at some point, amidst seemingly full achievements, they still feel empty. Because the profound nature of a human being is not born to possess more, but to become a more complete version of themselves. Perfection here is not about becoming a person without flaws. No one is perfect enough to live without having been selfish, hurt, or lost. Self-perfection is the continuous process of recognizing the dark corners within and learning how to turn them into light. It is when one knows how to control anger instead of letting it control them. It is when they learn how to forgive to release the soul from hatred. It is when they dare to live true to themselves instead of trying to be a copy of social expectations. A rough stone does not naturally become a diamond. It must undergo pressure and painful grinding to reveal its inherent beauty within. Humans are often unhappy when they live too far from their true nature. They try to brace themselves to please others until they lose their inner voice. Someone may be successful in the eyes of society, but lonely with their own spirit. For if a tree is forced to grow in the wrong direction of light, it will grow distorted though still alive. So it is with us when not living true to our core values. We will always feel something missing that we cannot name. Self-perfection is actually a journey of returning to original sincerity, to compassion, to inner peace, that we once lost amidst the noise of life. There are those who grow gentler as they mature, because they understand true strength lies not in competing with the world, but in the ability to conquer the weaknesses within. Every challenge life sets out is not to destroy us, but to force us to mature more in awareness and spirit. Life is like the journey of sculpting a statue from a rough block of stone. Every pain is a chisel blow. Every failure is a moment of refining. Initially, that process can make us feel like we are crumbling, but over time, we will realize every wound is silently revealing a more beautiful and profound version of ourselves. The most beautiful reason for our presence in the world is not to be great in the eyes of the public, but to move closer each day to the person we truly can become deep within.